You are at Lake Rant, where I rant about whatever my $15 a month plus pages want me to rant about. You can get one of these by being one of those. This one's for Echophoria, who says, rant about the improvements you've made to your writing and how you've made them, and the effects of hard work compared to breakthroughs slash inspiration. Also rant about the improvement of my art if you want, and then links to a Twitter progression picture. I'll talk about that in a moment. I would say that hard work and improvements, breakthroughs, are both equally important. I'd say that they've both come, like, just writing over and over and over again is great. But you also need to have an idea of, like, what you're trying to make better if you want to make things better. If you think that everything you're doing is A-okay and nothing needs to be changed at all, then you're never going to even try to make what you're doing different. You could write a billion things and maybe you'll get better at doing the specific thing you're trying to do, but it won't matter if you don't think that there's any problems with it, you know? I think most people naturally, if their work's not connecting, or if people are reacting to it in a way that you didn't expect or that you didn't want, you have to immediately, make a decision. Is it their fault or my fault? Well, it doesn't really matter if it's their fault, because even if it is, if you want them to pay attention, you have to account for it. Even if the problem is that people literally don't understand you and you're a fucking genius, it doesn't matter. If you're trying to get big and nobody's appreciating your shit, you need to change something. Granted, a lot of the time, maybe if you're just not reaching a big enough audience, but everybody seems to love what you're doing, it might just be that you need to market yourself better. But, like, if people are saying, that they don't get the point, or that, like, if you can just observe that people aren't getting what you meant, you gotta change something. So, I would say that there have been a few revelations that have been incredibly impactful. People have probably heard me talk about the time that a college professor told me I needed to simplify my writing, to take out all the unnecessary bits. That was a very big change for me. From then on, I became very Spartan about trying to erase unnecessary detail from my scripts, and then eventually I sort of started working some of that fat back in, because, fat is flavor in the case of a steak, and it can be flavor in the case of writing as well. You just got to know what is your healthy fats and what are your unhealthy fats, essentially. So, learning that was a process. There have been times where I just kind of looked at videos I made and said, like, why don't I think this one worked? What do I think was wrong with it, or what do I think could have been done better? Like, my Great Anime Director Who Time Forgot video was a direct result of looking at the Makoto Shinkai video that I'd done not long before that, and feeling that while I had been really happy with the script while I was writing it, it took a month for the video to get edited. And by the time it came out, I hadn't edited it, it was Devu, I was able to look at it and say, man, I really wish this had more of a narrative through line. I wish I'd focused on different elements. I wish that I'd done this or that to tighten it up and make it just more structurally sound. And so I applied all of that to the next video I did. And sometimes I don't think through a script entirely. Sometimes it's just brain to paper, and maybe it could have been more thought out. Maybe there's more that could be done with it, and, like, I haven't applied all the lessons I've learned, But for the most part, that stuff kind of becomes second nature. It's like when you start teaching yourself, like, if you do have one of those revelations and then you start incorporating that into your writing every time you write, eventually it's just going to come naturally. And so I honestly think I take a lot of things for granted. I think there's a lot of times where I learned a particular lesson, studied it, went for it, and then kind of forgot. And sometimes that can be dangerous, where, again, I might write something and then look at it and go, like, why didn't I apply the lessons I learned back in this video? And it's because, again, I'm not thinking about it every time. I'm not going into each video thinking about the long list of lessons that I've learned from the past. It just becomes second nature when you practice enough. So, I guess really both things in equal measure. And I think that my writing has pretty much always improved over time, insofar as my natural ability has gotten better. So my ability to just put brain to paper is like, what will come out of that is better than what it used to be. It's like, maybe there was a time where I really struggled to capture an idea. I would say the biggest evolution that I felt in my style is that There was a time when it was really hard for me to write about stuff I liked in a lot of depth because I never knew where to start. I would just be like, oh, it's so overwhelming. There's so much to say. How do I even structure a video about something I really love? And over time, I've learned how to do that. And now I don't really encounter instances where I'm not sure how I'm going to talk about something entirely, like if I watch a show, if I have an idea of a concept, I can usually figure out how am I going to approach this based on just having bashed my head against it many times in the past, having, had revelations about individual shows. K-On!, for instance, was the Loving Thesis was a product of a revelation. I kind of bring it up in the video. This idea that I had realized K-On! Was a show that got better the more of it you watched. And, like, just that thought carried that video. So, sometimes it's just about, like, finding an into making it an individual piece. And, once you have that then it's like just letting all the things flow through. I know this isn't probably the most helpful for people who are looking for lessons, but it's like you just gotta keep writing basically and keep looking for how to make your stuff better. If you are completely satisfied with something you've written, show it to a bunch of people, and if somebody else isn't satisfied, think about how you what they think is the problem with it, and don't just take it for granted that whatever they think is the problem, but think about what would cause them to think what they're thinking. Try to figure that out. It might not be what they think it is, but it might be something else. Anyway, let's compare these Echophoria pictures. We've got the OG. Looks all right. A little wave, a little unsure. It feels like almost impressionistic in a way. And then we've got this one, much tighter, way more confident lines. Much darker black tone, which I like the contrast a lot better. This is kind of muddy. There's too many different tones. This is like very impactful because the use of extra tone is light. It's just used in like highlights and features, whereas the base black and white really pops. It's just way sharper. The design looks better. All around, just a massive improvement, I would say. So, good job.